Hi, I'm April. I'm a mother and TELUS ambassador, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this discussion by TELUS Wise. TELUS's free digital literacy education program, providing people of all ages with resources and workshops to stay safe in our increasingly digital world. Today, we'll be discussing a very important topic, the growing risk of youth being extorted over intimate images. This is often referred to as sextortion. And joining me in conversation about this topic is Carol Todd and Signe Arneson.
My name is Carol Todd, and I'm an educator in British Columbia, and I'm also the mother of Amanda Todd, who was a victim of sextortion. Amanda was bullied, cyberbullied, harassed, and sextorted online. In the summer of 2022, there was a lengthy trial against her offender, who was found guilty of all charges. Sextortion happens globally. The internet has no boundaries. I have become a strong advocate in this area since this started happening to my daughter and since her death by suicide. And I am really working hard to keep kids safer online.
My name is Signe Arneson. I'm the Associate Executive Director at the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. I've been with the organization now for about 22 years. We operate cybertip.ca, which is Canada's national tip line to report the online sexual exploitation of children. We also operate an initiative that reduces the availability of child sexual abuse material across the globe, which is called Project Arachnid, and we are currently issuing approximately 20,000 notices per day to hosting providers to have that material removed. So I'm pleased to be joining this conversation as we play a major role both within this country and around the world in reducing online victimization.
And I think this conversation is going to be really important. But let's start off with, what is sextortion?
There are two types of sextortion that we are hearing about right now in news and press releases by law enforcement. There's traditional sextortion and there's financial sextortion. And generally what sextortion is a type of blackmail where a offender, predator, will threaten to publicly share public and explicit information, images, videos of a victim, of a targeted victim. Sextortion is happening with boys and with girls, and it's something that we need to be more aware of, that we need to learn more about and educate, because it's not just a Canadian problem, it's a global problem. So working together will make that happen.
And Signe, why is it so prevalent in the media right now?
This has been going on all the way back to when Amanda had her experience and tragically lost her life. But the pandemic, I would say, has really shifted where people have been spending their time. So both children as well as those who have an interest in harming kids. So from March to August of 2022, we saw a 56% increase in reports coming into the tip line. Today, we're managing around 300 sextortion reports per month from Canadians, and that's just the tip of the iceberg because most of these kids don't want to come forward due to the shame, the embarrassment, the humiliation. So typically, boys are targeted for money, and we're seeing girls targeted for more intimate images. And through the pandemic, about 87% of our reports would relate to boys, and that would be along the financial sextortion strand.
That's really interesting because my son is 13 and he plays video games and he's on Snapchat and he has an Instagram account. And I try to do my best to see what he's doing, but I know that I'm not even getting into it. So Carol, we know that sextortion is happening online, but where specifically on the internet is this happening?
Sextortion can start on any website, any app, messaging platforms, video games, where children and youth congregate and meet, message, and communicate with each other. So it's not just one specific place, but there is a process that our offenders go to target our children and our youth. The first contacts will be one of the offender developing bonds of trust with the victim. And then the threats may come later. 77% of all sextortion incidences start on Instagram or Snapchat, and then the predator, offender, perpetrator will convince the young person to move to another platform where they say they can talk more in private. So that might go down to WhatsApp or through texting. And so when you ask where can this specifically happen, it can happen all over, which is why it's really important that we talk to our kids of all ages.
So now that we discussed what sextortion is, let's talk about prevention. So Carol, How can I talk to my son in a way that doesn't scare him? What can we do to open up this conversation without making them feel bad?
You can provide real life examples to them about stories and get them, engage them in that conversation about what do you think if this really happened and what could that person have done? Find and preview videos related to internet safety and sextortion on YouTube, and then share with them what you found and get their thoughts and their opinions. There's some really good learning videos out there, but make sure you as an adult preview them first. There's so many strategies out there, and every parent and every adult only knows what's best with their kid. But we can never stop learning those strategies in talking about them, just like we can never stop talking about personal safety and also digital awareness. There's lots of resources online that are really good to use, TELUS Wise being one of them. There's a digital guide on social media safety and what you want to learn more about as an adult and how to have those conversations with your children. I've played the Kahoot games. You can do that as a family.
Definitely the TELUS Wise website is amazing, and I love that you've explored all of it. What are some of the red flags that kids should know and watch for, and that parents should also ask kids about?
It's pretty critical parents have this conversation with their kids. They shouldn't be introducing the conversation in the teenage years. It should be growing and progressing as your child developmentally changes. So we know that someone who's looking to sexually harm children and youth are going to manipulate them into complying with sexual requests using common tactics. So what are some of the common tactics that we'd want you to be talking to your teenager about? Well, inappropriate levels of affection. So you've just connected with this individual and suddenly it's turned into, I wish I could hug and kiss you. So based on the duration by which you've known them, it's really inappropriate that it's all of a sudden escalated that quickly. There's also excessive attention that occurs with a lot of these perpetrators. So they'll contact youth several times a day, sometimes hundreds of times in a day. So they're incredibly persistent. That's a red flag behavior. Keeping secrets, so encouraging kids to have secret accounts and not telling their parents or caregivers about that we would see that as problematic, as well as pitting parents against their kids. So one thing that we see offenders do with children is they'll say, your parents really don't understand you. I understand where you're coming from. So they'll really start to try and create that divide between parents and their kids. There's flattery, there's complimenting, showing lots of support for the youth. We also see promising gifts, money, drugs, alcohol, and then some of the more obvious things that kids might tweak onto to say, yeah, this is unsafe and problematic, is it escalates to threats and intimidation or harassing the youth. So these are things you need to be reviewing and talking to your kid about. And if they're experiencing these types of situations, that they need to be coming to a safe adult for some form of help.
And that's the most important piece, is they need to know that we're safe, that we're a safe space. It's really tough for us to monitor our child's online activity 24/7. So are there any safety measures or tools that we should put in place?
Well, in the applications itself, there are privacy settings that I think that parents need to familiarize themselves with so that they can talk about it with their kids. You have to explain to them why it's important that these settings are in place. So there are internet monitoring applications that many parents have asked about. I'm not a fan of those because I believe it can provide a false sense of security that once you have one in place, that parents think, okay, now I don't have to talk or monitor my child's mobile device at all. Even phones now will have privacy settings, geolocation settings that you can toggle off, but ensure that every time there's a major update on your operating system that you go back and you check those toggles so that they don't revert back to default. Right? So there is work behind it. You have to have ongoing conversations with your children, no matter how old they are. And you have to build that relationship and trust. And so having conversations with your children really early is really important. You don't have to talk about sextortion exploitation with your 5-year-old, but you do talk about respect and trust and friendships. You talk about personal safety because your kids are out there in the real world, right? And eventually, there is that online world too, but we some of us think that there is a big separation between that online and that offline world, but really they intermingle with terms of trust, communication, respect, and how we teach our kids. And so you have to remind your kids that they can come and talk to you anytime, no matter what. Adults are encouraged to listen to what their child has to tell them. You try and provide no judgment, no shaming, no negative effects. Only because if your child has taken enough courage to tell you, I sent an intimate image to someone, I think I'm being sextorted. That takes a lot of courage for them to tell, because there's a sense of embarrassment that first overcomes the young person, and then they're afraid they're going to, 1, get in trouble, 2, they're going to get their devices taken away, and 3, they're going to be judged. So listen without judgment. TELUS Wise has a smartphone and technology contract. It's made for families and for young people when they might get their first mobile device or their smartphone. And so what the template does is it outlines basic rules and responsibilities of smartphone ownership when a child first gets their first smartphone. Because just like driving a car, we need to make sure our children are very competent and they're responsible in handling a big responsibility like a mobile phone, or in that car example, they need to know how to drive that car properly because there are many dangers with it. I always recommend that a technology contract is put in place before a mobile device smartphone is handed over to your child, so that you can have some communication and learning take place.
I love that idea. I think it's great. And I think, especially for my son, because he takes those things seriously, I think he would do that for sure. Thank you, Carol and Signy, for talking us through some prevention tools and strategies. But unfortunately, the sad truth is we're not always able to prevent. And sometimes we need to know how to deal with the situations as they unfold. So what should parents do if their teen is being sextorted? So where can the youth go to get help if they're being sextorted?
So there are really 4 key things that we advise to anyone who finds themselves in this kind of precarious situation. Number 1, stay calm and report it. You need to report it. That's so critical, particularly in sextortion, because these individuals are not just targeting one child, they're targeting multiple children. So getting that into entities like our organization through cybertip.ca or reporting to the police is really essential, because there are linkages that can be made and that can help identify the individual who's doing this. You want to immediately have your teenager stop all communication. So you want to deactivate accounts, but you don't want to delete them because there could be valuable information contained within those accounts. They also, offenders tend to come at kids from multiple accounts. So you need to look at all the avenues by which the individual has come in and attempted to contact your child and deactivate those accounts. One of the biggest things I can say to youth and to parents is never comply with a threat. If you comply with a threat, all you've done is reinforce that they can get money out of you or they can get more images. It is one of the worst things that you can do. So never give in to the threat. If you do, then you need to come forward and tell someone. Don't continue sending the images or sending the money thinking that somehow it's going to get any better. Also, you want to keep the correspondence. So you want, if you have the person's username, any other information related to the communication, the image and videos that may have been shared, all of that will be important information once you report that in. So all this stuff that I'm talking about, because it's a lot, can be found on our website at cybertip.ca, and I'd encourage the public to go and visit different sections in our site so that they can go through some of this information.
Carol, do you have anything to add to that?
What I really appreciate about the Canadian Centre for Child Protection is that they offer youth and families help with getting sexual abuse material or intimate images of the minor child removed from the internet or the platform where the material was posted. They're such an incredible resource in such situations, working extensively with teens, schools, and families, and helping with everything from emotional support to connecting youth with therapy or victim services if needed.
And I want to know if you guys have any final tips or advice you want people to take away from this conversation. Carol, back to you.
These are important conversation starters that we need to talk with our kids about. Be careful about who you share your photos with online. Report inappropriate messages to the social media platform or website where it was sent from. Never send any money to someone that you have met online. Turn your settings, including location settings on social media accounts, to private so that people you are not friends with can't see your posts or your location. Remember that photos sent can be screen captured and shared. And lastly, don't add people you don't know on any social media account to your friends list.
And Signe?
Well, I'd first like to start by saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry to Carol Todd that, well over a decade ago, she lost her daughter, the most unimaginable thing a parent could imagine. And here we are, 12, 13 years later, and we're in even worse shape with youth online being sextorted. What I want to tell parents is you are the first and last line of defense. So it is really essential that you talk to your kids about online risks and red flag behaviors when they're communicating with others online, particularly when it's someone that they haven't met offline. That is really essential. And you want to ensure that you're regularly reminding your child that you are there for them. And if you are not their safe adult because maybe they're embarrassed or humiliated, it's a hard thing to talk to your parent about. Make sure they identify with you who their safe adult is. It could be a teacher. It could be someone else in their life that is close to them that they could have that conversation with. We've lost far too many kids to this issue. This just can't continue.
Thank you so much, both of you. And I know that we're just scratching the surface here, but if you are looking to learn more tips and tangible actions for having those safe and educational conversations with your youth, TELUS Wise has some great workshops, virtual events, and resources on that topic as well. One of the ones that I'm going to be sitting down with my son to do is called the Happiness Workshop. It's for kids in high school. It's helping them have a healthy relationship with technology and ensuring resiliency. I want to thank Carol and Signe for joining us today to talk about how we can support our youth in staying safe online. And I encourage those watching to visit TELUS.com/wise to check out all of the free resources and workshops that TELUS Wise offers and help you stay safe in the digital world. Thanks for watching.